Earthlings of the world unite. Hello, everyone. So, as you can see, this is not still alive. That was yesterday. So, we brought that forward for a special with Animal Rising. So we thought, well, we've got a slot. So we thought, let's fill the slot. And so Andy is here to help me do that. So welcome along, Andy. I've called this a watch along without it being a watch along because it's not really a watch along, but
hopefully the first bit will be a laugh along. No,
a laugh along, yeah. Well, as usual,
much needed bit of positivity.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. As Jelly Japers in the vegan activist movement, I came across something on the street and it ended up being quite funny, and then it ended up being quite serious, didn't it? So we thought we'll go through that, which is quite interesting. Let's just see who's in the house. As we say, Graham was first. So hi, Graham.
Hey, Graham.
Then Michael. You got beaten today, Michael. Slipping. There's Terry. Hi, Terry. Colleen is here. Hello. Deb is here. Hello. That might be everyone so far. Probably we didn't really decide to do this until last night, and so still we've got 13 people tuning in. So this is really good. So as ever, reminder that the comments will be shown on the screen. If they're any good, of course, no trash or anything. And so, but you won't have to pay to get them on there. And if anybody tunes in, not on my YouTube channel, if you switch to that, that's where the better or the more complete chat will be for you to join in or otherwise. I know there's some people, funny enough, Andy, that just like to tune in on Facebook because they don't.
Absolutely, that's what I found. That's why I uploaded the documentary directly to Facebook, because as easy as it is to click a link to go to YouTube, some people don't like to do that. So the fact that it stays within the app, actually, it does improve the interaction, I've noticed.
Yeah, but it also means that, if people don't want to comment, but they also don't want to get distracted by the comments.
Yeah, well, that's some of the thing, isn't it? Sometimes the live chat can be a bit distracting and you miss what's being said because you're having a conversation within the live chat. Yeah, that's right.
I suppose so, yeah. Anyway, so welcome to this watch along, which is not a watch along. So, Andy, have you got your didgeridoo ready? I think I must make them a bit shorter. I think.
I think you enjoy making those too much.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Well, yeah, like you can talk.
True.
Yeah. Hey, do you want to tell people your sad news at the moment, or?
Yeah. So if anyone follows the kind of enhancements and things on the YouTube, you will have to wait until next Monday. I've got a 1-week ban on YouTube for a video that I uploaded 14 months or so ago. That's finally got a flag last night. I did appeal it, but lost the appeal instantly. So yeah, I've got a 1 week. It's only a ban from uploading, so I can still comment and watch videos and all that kind of thing. I just can't upload for a week.
How do you think it works? Who's the monitoring thing?
I have no idea, because like I said, this is a video that's been up. I mean, you may well even remember the video. It was of a donkey that's treated particularly badly, and then it gets hold of one of the man's feet in its mouth and runs round in a circle, and there's a bit of revenge essentially. It was just, literally, I just more or less shared it from something I saw on Instagram a long time ago. It was something like the animal strike back. And like I said,
it had a famous one with a pig mum. She kind of somebody is trying to separate her young, right? And then she goes, it's similar kind of thing.
Yeah, that's all it was. There's nothing actually graphic in it. I mean, at all. There's no blood or anything like that. And it had been up for a long, long time. So I'm not sure. Maybe it's just a change in their policy, or maybe somebody reported it or what. But it's just disappointing.
Here's Graham with insider knowledge. It was probably only reported recently. Not by you though, Graham. I assume
Yeah,
so.
annoy anyone recently? What, in the non-vegan community, in the vegan community, in the family? Like, who are we talking about? Yeah, probably most days, but hopefully no
It
one
could just be
that would
about
go.
any human being on the planet, really, couldn't
Yeah,
it?
hopefully no one that would go to the lengths of searching. I mean, I've got 200 plus videos on this account. That would take a lot of effort. It may well just be a basic YouTube policy change. It probably was the only one I've got with graphic footage, shall we say? So we'll see. Hopefully I don't get any more, because then it's 2 weeks.
Do you
And I
think
mean,
there's an actual team of human beings
it
assigned?
certainly wasn't a human that responded to my appeal, because I appealed, and by the time I'd literally clicked the appeal button, I had an email to say your appeal has been rejected. So unless there was someone there at the other side waiting for me to press that button, no, that's AI.
Mr. Shifty Eye said it wasn't him, so there you go. So hi,
Oh, yeah,
Joanne.
maybe.
Right, okay. So I suppose we better get on with this impromptu, spontaneous show. So I'll just bring this up. This is this is what all started it off. So I was on an evening walk, and there's like a recycling area near me, and which is great. You know, just go around the corner, and you got all these. There's like a clothes one, all the different colors of bottles and glass and stuff, and then there's also a can one. But I noticed behind it, I just saw the corner of something, and I noticed that a crow was trying to, open something, and so I went and had a look, and it ended up being a platter of sandwiches. And so I took a picture. Well, I took the lid off. You can actually see the lid, just a little tidge of it, at the top left, as it were. And so I took it, and so I took a picture and I sent it to Andy, and thinking, this is a bit weird. The first thing you said when you came back, Andy, is if you put that picture on any or quite a lot of the vegan groups and say, am I allowed to eat this? A lot of people will say yes, wouldn't they? Which is
Yeah, they absolutely would. Yeah.
And I hadn't really looked at the ingredients, as it were. I kind of basically ignored that, really. And so I then got back to Andy and said, well, given the fact that some ingredients are bad for birds, I wonder whether I've made a bit of a mistake. I'd kind of gone by then. And so you said that you zoomed in, which I hadn't done. And you said that it was a usual non-vegan platter, you described it, I think, Andy. So
yeah, I mean, I would describe it as kind of like, I don't know, if you had worked in an office or anything like that, and you sort of outside catered, and that's the kind of thing that would be bog standard. I think it was tuna was one, cheese was one, there was pig flesh was one, and egg mayonnaise was one. I think that's kind of standard. Those are your types of sandwich. Yeah.
And then you started to speculate about how come it might have got there. So you said you thought it was an animal lover, because we've always got this phrase, the animal lover, in mind at the moment. And so, and you said, so it wasn't a vegan platter. And you said, well, hang on, though, it's not a non-vegan platter either, because it's got plants in it. And as we know, non-vegans don't eat plants,
Exactly,
yeah, because they blame vegans for everything wrong with plants, which we're going to come on to. And so you figured then that it was an animal lover who had left this for the other animals, right?
Yeah, and so, I mean, it would tick quite a lot of the boxes that that requires. What actually made me think of was every single summer when we have the pleas from like the RSPCA or the other charities that say, if you just put a saucer of water in the back garden, hedgehogs will be, and it's like, yeah, these are people that are consuming multitudes of other animals, but they feel good about putting that saucer of water outside. Like that's cements the animal lover. And like you could say exactly the same thing. There's no connection there about the ingredients, but the idea of doing something good for others, that might actually have been genuine.
Well, better than nothing. What do you want people to do? Nothing at all. Is that what you want? Is it? That's how. Yeah. So Deb says, are they sandwiches? Yes, they are cut into those. Suppose what you do it. You do it a kind of diagonal kind of cut, don't you?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah,
I think
Terry
the
says,
kids' term is cut into triangles.
yeah.
But I was
And
trying to work out as well whether those slices of tomato were the vegan option or whether they were like garnish, because they were just sort of like randomly tossed around.
maybe it fell out of a Ryanair plane. What do you think? It's possible.
Or
So
maybe there were a few tomato sandwiches and someone just didn't like the tomato and picked it all out. Could be. But it was just strange how they were scattered around the way they were. You'd have thought they'd have made all the bread soggy like that.
yeah, so then we moved on to the fact that in this area there's quite a lot of urban foxes, or suburban foxes, really, I suppose you could say. And so you then came up with this idea. Well, in that case, you've probably got a situation where this animal lover knows that. And I mean, the first speculation from you was that this animal lover would place them there with the lid because they would know that a vegan activist would pass by and take the lid off, right? So that was your first speculation about it. Then I mentioned the foxes, but also I was saying that one of my neighbors said that foxes find wheat toxic. So I did a little bit of research about that, and it doesn't seem to be true, but some people say it's not great for them. But apparently foxes will eat bread with no consequences if they have to, but it's not something that they would normally choose. So I expect you get a situation here where the foxes would take out the flesh, leave the rest for the birds, I suppose. And
Well,
so
probably. I'm not actually 100% sure. Presumably, I suppose I think if a fox came across that, they'd probably scoop as much as they could carry, right? Rather than pulling apart the bread. I mean, they might have a quick bite, but if they're taking food back, I would imagine that it would just be a case of however many they could fit in their mouth.
yeah, this is an interesting one because I didn't think of this, and I don't think you did at the time either. The poison idea, but then the point is, actually, I think we did think about this, and we were thinking, yeah, but what if a homeless person was, and so I mean, the chances are that a homeless person might be tempted to kind of, certainly because there was a lid on it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it was a bit weird. I mean, it was obviously some catering event. There's no offices or anything nearby. It's next to a church. Well, yeah,
Could have been the church. Maybe
yeah.
maybe it was just the case of obviously I mean, I'm trying to look at this from their point of view potentially, but if they thought that the two elements, the lid and the bottom, the tray, could have been recycled, but obviously it was covered in sandwiches. If we leave them here, someone or whatever may consume the sandwiches and then do the right thing and put the plastic in the recycling bin. Otherwise, it makes no sense to me. That's the only rationale I can think of.
Well, it could be that. What do you do with the collection joke? Some priest was asked that, and they said, "Well, we collect it all together on a plate and we throw it in the air, and that God wants, He keeps, and the rest He sends back down again." So maybe maybe they threw the collection up and a platter of sandwiches.
Yeah, God just took a handful of slices of tomato and sent the rest back down. Maybe.
You never know. And so we were then saying, well, actually, this is interesting because this is where it gets serious, folks. This raises issues about food waste. And also, we then thought, well, what about the crop deaths thing? Because we're vegans are always getting hit by the crop deaths argument. And so we're thinking here, we've got food waste. And within that food waste, there's a lot of crop deaths, right? And then I thought, I mean, what do you think of this, Andy? I was thinking that if you were thinking on a community level or the population of vegans versus non-vegans, you would have thought that vegans are less likely to produce the most food waste. I think they would probably be a bit more.
Yeah.
I mean, I certainly know loads of vegans who would be into things like composting as well, but also they would just make sure that they don't produce it in the first place,
Well, yeah, and I suppose the other thing you have to factor in also, which is just a lucky side effect, is that a lot of our foods don't have such a short sell-by stroke use-by date either. You don't get too many things that you have to eat by tomorrow or by the next day or any of that kind of thing. So And I mean, even with that into consideration, there are actually some serious health risks by ignoring dates on certain animal products, where you haven't really got that with the plant-based ones either. So I suppose there's a whole host of other things that help that. But you can take examples like Camp Out, can't you? Where you can look with the aerial footage within an hour or so of that place shutting, and there's no litter anywhere, and yet you can take a literally stereotypical beach from anywhere in the country on a nice hot day within an hour of the people leaving, and it literally looks like a dump truck's been there and just emptied it. So yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily say that every vegan is doing this and doing that, but I would say across the board, yeah, I think so. I think these things matter more.
Yeah, that raises an interesting one. Do you think that I mean, you're right. I mean, if you look at the end of Glastonbury or any kind of festival, it looks like, people have just chucked stuff everywhere, including tents and everything. I wonder what the end of Camp Out would look like.
They've released aerial photos last year. I think it was on the Sunday late evening, literally within a couple of hours of everyone going, and it was immaculate. It really was. I mean, I'm sure they made an extra special effort knowing the photographs are being taken. However, it looked pristine. It looked as though Camp Out had never been there. It was an amazing difference, yeah. And I think there was a few people that made comparison pictures of something like Reading Festival versus Camp Out and showed the difference.
Yeah, I got a vague memory of that, and I was just, that's probably what made me think about that, because it's interesting, isn't it? So anyway,
one of the things, I had a friend that used to volunteer at Leeds Festival quite often for the free ticket, and they said the cleanup job afterwards, you would not believe how many people just left their tents with ripped sleeping bags or duvets and pillows and soiled underwear and all sorts of stuff. They'd leave the tent up, literally just go. Leave all the, it's like, it wasn't just litter picking. You were talking about a whole host of belongings.
Our throwaway society, eh?
Yeah. So yeah, I think there's a significant difference between that, and obviously it's not just the attendees either, is it? I would imagine the bin access and all of this kind of stuff is taken into consideration far more. The people that run the food stalls and that kind of thing will provide, all of that kind of stuff. Everything's going to be slightly more caring to others or to the environment.
Here's a story. I went down to the Isle of Wight from Yorkshire because my mum was a bingo manager, and so I went. It was the end of my schooling time, but so I had a year or so in school on the Isle of Wight, and this is about 1973 now, maybe the very end of 72. I think it was 73, and the Isle of Wight Pop Festival, as it was called, with Jimi Hendrix and all that, was 1970, and they were still clearing up from that two years later, because like festivals weren't a big thing then. I think it was just left to a couple of farmers, and they'd kind of piled everything high, and they were going through it in terms of transferring it onto lorries, but also they had a problem of getting it off the island. So because I don't suppose the Isle of Wight, which is, I think it's only 25 miles deep and about 60 wide, so I don't suppose there'd be much in terms of landfill and stuff there.
No.
So it was a major ecological disaster even two years later. So the story so far is I find this, and then we're speculating on what's gone on. Andy's come up with this idea that some animal lover has left it for the other animals. And I said, well, how do you explain the lid? And so after a few minutes thought, another message came back saying, right, I fixed it. The animal lover knows that a fox could nose the lid off, and maybe even a desperate bird could, or a larger bird could. And so the idea then is to not risk the smaller birds because they couldn't. So that was your torturous kind of rationale towards the end there. That was pretty good. And so you also said that if that was true, then this commitment to reducing suffering qualifies them as an animal lover. So gets them straight into the ISPCA, or the RSPCA, and so then we kind of start to get a little bit more serious. And you mentioned the real junk food project, and then we start talking about other things. But let me just show you the last little bit of this, which is sometime later. What's that voice you can get on TikTok? Sometime later, or something like that. Yeah, and so everything had gone, and so I don't know who had taken it.
Was the lid still there out of interest, or had that gone as well?
Yeah, it was kind of elsewhere. Yeah, so
So all in all, potentially someone had a treat, if you want to look at it that way, and all the recyclable materials were left for you to recycle. So if that was the idea, mission accomplished.
Yeah, Graham. No, I would say no to that, because it's quite a posh area, should we say, at least relative to some areas of Dublin. So if you're going to do that,
is there a car park there? They weren't left by mistake, were they? But like someone put them down and then drove up.
No. Actually, there is a big car park, but it's on the other side of the church, so that wouldn't make any sense either.
No, I still think it's that. Then I think that they still had a big tray, and they thought, well, I don't want to put the sandwiches in the recycling, because I mean, a lot of people, I suppose this brings on something that we were discussing after this. A lot of people don't realise that unless your recycling is actually cleaned to a sufficient standard, it doesn't get recycled. It still ends up going to landfill. And actually, I remember watching something before that one of the most prominent things that doesn't get recycled is cow's milk plastic bottles, because unless you wash them out properly, by the time they reach from you putting them in the bin or recycling to get into the recycling plant, that milk has started to ferment or whatever, and they won't wash it out, so it just goes to landfill in the end. So actually, I think a lot of the time, if we're not cleaning these products really, or this packaging really, really well,
there's some complicated arguments here. For a start off, they reckon that it's about 9% of the stuff that's in the recycling ends up being recycled for the very reason.
I can believe it.
Yeah. And so they did things like they got fabric conditioner bottles and they cut them open, and you found, it's all still there on the inside and all this kind of stuff.
Well, I mean, I'm sure everyone has had that situation in the past where you've got the last bit of ketchup that you're trying to get out the bottle and you can't get it out. So, like, there must be so many different things like that where there's just a small amount, especially if it's got a label around it and you can't even see what's left. Where, that small amount. And I mean, that's what I was trying to think with this platter of sandwiches. Maybe someone was thinking, if I just put this in the recycling bin with these sandwiches, all of this stuff's going to be contaminated potentially, and none of it will be recycled. Maybe that was their thinking. Because that is a huge, when actually people think about their average, each household, their recycling. Think about the things of how many times it's not actually 100% clean, and think actually how much of my recycling bin every fortnight or whatever is actually being recycled.
Yeah, I want to make a complaint. Graham is picking on me, and Deb is joining in, which isn't.
I missed the Graham one. I just saw the Deb one.
Oh yeah, saying that I kicked it over. That was the first allegation. And then, as evidence, they could see my foot in
his foot in that photo.
And so Deb goes, "Oh, good detective work." Yeah. So thanks, people. You're pals. You are.
I mean, if we were going to go a bit further, then in the first photo, you could see a bit of the lid. So I think that you flipped that off as well. First of all.
Oh, I did do that. I told you that.
Yeah,
I did that.
Actually, Graham might have a point here. Follow the evidence.
Well, going back to the church and the car park, if somebody left it by mistake in the church car park, somebody else might have walked it around the church to the recycling part.
Possible, yeah, it's possible. Yeah, I'm just thinking, like, is that the sort of place that you'd hire maybe for like a kid's birthday party or anything like that?
Don't think so, but don't quote me on that. I don't know.
Because that's what it looks like to me. It doesn't look like outside catering has been brought in. It looks like someone's gone to one of these places and just brought, a pre-made thing. So yeah, I would say it's a fairly small event. So it could be church related. It makes sense.
I think we should get an investigative journalist on this job. Right. Okay. So this is where we get serious then, in the sense that we then start thinking about food waste and things like the associated crop deaths, because again, even numerically, vegans I mean, I think that generally speaking, vegans are probably going to create less food waste anyway, but just numerically, they're bound to. So again, all these kind of crop deaths arguments, again, fall on the head of the non-vegans in a way. But what we want to do is, I'm going to bring up the British one first, I think, Andy, because remember how to do this. Sure, I can. That's the UK one. That's it. Right. So this is the because you found something quite interesting here. So this is the food waste stats. We've got the stats from Britain and also from Ireland, right? And they both say a very similar thing. They go through all of the all the stats, and then they kind of go through where does it come from? Where's the most come from? And is there oh no, I think the graph is on the other one. Essentially, what it's basically saying is the people to blame are individual households, right? And we were sitting there. Look at that one. So on average, a family of four wastes £70 worth of food a month. But there's somewhere where it says that they
said about the percentage,
It's clear on the other, but it does say that here. But this is how well prepared I am. I can't remember where it is now. But the interesting thing about
I think it was that one. I think it was there. Just literally, I think you was just on it.
This one. Okay.
70% of food waste is from households.
Yeah.
I personally would challenge that. And just so everyone could sort of think where I'm coming from. Just think of every Subway in the United Kingdom. Think of every pizza shop. Think of every sandwich shop. Think of every buffet. Think of every all you can eat kind of place. Think of every carvery. Think of everywhere where they prepare food for that day or at best the next day, and it has to go in the bin. And I don't think that households could compete with that alone, let alone the amount of bread potentially that we're talking about. Think of how many sandwiches go in the bin, how many wraps, like if you wanted to take, say, non-human crop deaths out the equation, just focus on us for a moment, then, wheat would be one of the most significant. So just factor in bread. Think how many sandwiches, pre-made sandwiches, not just the ones that are in like the original platter, but like individual 2 sandwiches in a packet. How many of them per day get chucked out? It's astronomical numbers. I think basically it's just the standard old. They can get away with releasing.
This doesn't kind of ring true to us, and we've got experience of why. But also, Graham says this: that have you ever seen the waste in Lidl and Aldi? So what we used to do, Graham, after the vegan street on a Sunday, we used to go up to the Dunn store in Rathmines, which is an area of Dublin, and we had this kind of agreement worked out through Veganic Brannick. We had this agreement where we could take some bread for the sanctuary, but some of it would also go to a homeless, like a homeless distribution center, I think it was. So the bread was shared between those two. And the thing is, we used to come out of that place with, those really deep shopping trolleys, the ones you push along. We used to have 2 of those completely full of bread, right? And we were trying to work out why there was so much. And it seems to be that what it is, there's a policy that with the supermarkets, they tend to want to have their shelves full, even at the end of the day, because apparently there's some kind of food psychology kind of issue. Whereas if people come at the end of the day and they find empty shelves, for some reason, they then switch their custom because they see that in a negative way, in a weird way, right? And so we would arrive there and they would be taking off things from the shelf, and they'd probably only put it there, an hour earlier, if not less, because they needed this weird thing of having their shelves full all the time. Yeah. So it's very kind of weird, and so that's what we found. Declan, who's the manager of the Back in the Day Animal Sanctuary, wanted to find out whether it was the same with the fruit and veg, and it was, but they weren't allowed to give it to us for some reason, but only the bread. And as I said, we got huge amounts, And you did something similar, Andy, right?
It's almost exactly the same. Yeah, I used to go and pick up the waste. It was actually a cafe that I went to, and I used to get tons and tons, and we're talking loaves and loaves and loaves of bread. You know, hundreds of them, almost to the point where it was too much bread for the animals. You could only give them so much at so many times, and there was
Yeah, the
sometimes
same
it was too much.
with the sanctuary. Yeah, there's only a
And we'd
few.
get like,
Yeah.
say, 2 big black bin bags that would be full of like potato peelings and bits of cucumber, and all that would basically be the scraps from the kitchen as well, the food waste. So we'd get 2 big bags and all of that stuff. And I used to do that once a week. I used to go and pick that up. But then we also used to get the junk food project, and I think they're now called the Real Junk Food Project, that's still going. And that was very similar to what you are talking about, where they used to go and collect this food from all over the place, all different places, and the homeless people would get a bulk of it. And either what the homeless people couldn't eat, or they couldn't move, or maybe some of it was already like too far out of date, that would all come to the sanctuary. But how I know that a lot of these sandwiches and stuff are all going to refuse and they're not being recycled is because one of my jobs on a Monday, because the junk food project used to come on a Sunday afternoon, and one of my jobs on a Monday, I'd sometimes sit there for 3 hours with 2 or 3 bin bags of these pre-made sandwiches, peeling the cellophane off the one, emptying the sandwich into a box so that we could actually do it, and putting the plastic away. Whereas all of those would have gone in, still in the package with the cellophane on the front, and none of that would have been recycled.
Well,
so, like, I mean, if we looked at these things going forward, I mean, obviously, we've both talked, there's a huge abundance of bread alone. But if this was happening in every sanctuary all over the place, that would be miles better than it all going to refuse, because at least it would be recycled then too, potentially. Because leaving the bread inside, that's got zero chance of being recycled. At least if these were the bread and the sandwich was going to sanctuary, say, and someone was taking them out of the packet, as long as there's no real, I don't know, mayonnaise or something that's left in a big dollop in the back, that'll probably get recycled because it's already fairly clean.
Isn't it weird though? It's weird though, isn't it? The fact that we try out this word recycled, but I mean, I don't know. Do you know what it means? Where the stuff goes?
I've mentioned it a few times in conversations where when it was first really pushed, I can remember, in fact, Coca-Cola had like a statement about it saying, you know, we could actually bring down the price of our product with this recycling. Well, the only thing Coca-Cola's ever done in the last 10 years is go up and up and up and up and up. It hasn't come down, and it never will come down. I think that recycling is basically, it's a cruelty illusion word that makes people feel like they're doing good, they're making a change, and they're saving the planet without actually changing anything. I think it's just another myth, and a lot of people have fallen for it. I mean, up until a few years ago, up until I started doing the volunteering at the sanctuary, and I realized just how prevalent most of this stuff was, that this is no way any of this was going to recycling. None of it. It was all going to refuse. And then you actually think about all these big companies that are doing exactly the same thing, how many supermarkets there are, how many fast food places there are, how many sandwich shops, or it's just an insurmountable amount. And we're just talking about our island, not the world. So yeah, the food wastage, it's not just the fact that there are people starving to death so that this food can be sold elsewhere and fed to others, but that's going in the bin. It's not even being, used for the most part. So much of it is being wasted, and it's going in the bin. I just think that makes it even worse.
It's amazing, isn't it? So this is the Irish ones. And so I think this is giving, again, it's got this thing that the households seem to be the baddies here, but it doesn't seem to.
I would still contest it, but that seems to be a far more balanced percentage than the UK one was. What, 70%, was it?
Yeah.
I think that's ridiculous, personally. I think that's massively inflated. Yeah, and I would imagine it's just because the companies, it's kind of like they give the bare minimum, whereas the councils actually do care about that kind of thing, and that's the sort of thing they do spend money on research about for some strange reason.
Yeah, restaurants come out at 2022. It says here, manufacturing and processing, that's 29. So households are not massively larger in this estimate than it was in the British one.
Right? Yeah, and I mean, I'm not sure what it's like there, but here, pretty much every high street now has got. So let's say 10 years ago, it had 2 or 3 takeaway outlets. I bet you it's now got 6 or 7. The whole, once upon a time of one place sets up, you'd never set up another rival place next door. That doesn't seem to matter anymore. There's certain places just where I am that I've got pizza shop next to pizza shop next to pizza shop, and they all compete with one another without a problem. Because a lot of it now is all like online based. It's not necessarily walk-in custom. It's all over the internet, so the customers are shared out. It's all about discount codes and blah 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 blah. So there is enough custom for everyone. So there's so many more fast food joints now than there was 10, 15 years ago. So that wastage alone, especially when you think about any of these places, like I said, pizza or sandwich, where their ingredients are very short-lived. They're kept in like an open container or something like that, or you go in and pick what you want on your sandwich or in your food. All of that stuff's getting chucked away every single night.
Yeah, you were making that thing about the fact that, when you've just got kind of chopped veggies and they've got to be, again, you've got to have a plentiful supply even at the end of the day. You've got that. Debbie's saying, back to recycling companies, that there's some footage saying they're just throwing so-called.
I can believe it. Yeah. I can definitely believe it.
It's not hard to believe that, is it? So
No, and I mean, I can't remember what the documentary was that I was watching, but I remember when they were saying about how thorough they expect these things to be cleaned, and if they don't meet that standard, that's it. They just go. There's no, they don't. You'd think if you're going to put the time and the money and the effort into designing some sort of recycling plant that turns all these different things into something else, how hard would it be to have some sort of pressure washing system at the beginning to just make sure you can recycle everything?
Another part of the complication, because when water charges came in, and then you got this thing about, well, there's only 9% of recycling that actually happens, and so you've got to very carefully wash it out. In a society like Japan, that would be done much more efficiently. For example, households tend to have like can crushers and all those kind of devices in order to facilitate recycling. But then people were saying, well, yeah, but it's expensive now, water. So are you gonna kind of subsidize me washing the stuff that I'm sending to recycle?
Well, the thing is as well, just having two or three different bins for a lot of people is extra effort than they had to make before that. And now you're asking them to do something else as well. It's very simple to have a separate bin next to your normal bin, say, and you put your recycling in there. But if you've now got to put all of those things as part of your washing,
it's a cultural thing, though, Andy. I mean, they do that in Japan. Yeah.
But as they say, a lot of those things, like the technology or the kind of kitchen appliances and all of those things accommodate recycling. Whereas we're still designing kitchens where tellies pop up out the counter because that's our priority. But yeah, I've seen some of those videos where they go around some of the apartments in Japan and stuff, and like everything is like it slides out and it's a can crusher. It slides out and it's got, I don't know, this kind of adhesive strip. Everything is kind of like thought of.
Yeah, so I mean, Deb's saying that here in Arizona, water is getting very expensive and rare because of the droughts. So it would appear to me that the cleaning process at the recycling plant makes the most. Especially if they've got like power washers that recycle the water.
Absolutely, yeah. And they can keep that water heated to a temperature and all. I mean, some things are really easy, okay? Like if you've got a plastic bottle of pop or something, you've only really got to run that under the tap, give it a shake, and it's probably clean. But if you've got something like a jar of peanut butter, who wants to spend 10 minutes cleaning all of that out?
Jars of peanut butter are actually difficult to clean, aren't they?
Yeah, then just to throw it in the bin. It's not like you want to keep the jar because you want to put things in it. You're literally cleaning it to throw it in the bin.
Now, Andy, talking about different cultures, you want to explain to our non-British people what pop means?
Oh, pop. So like, so I guess soda.
Soda.
So like
soda.
Anything from Cherryade, Coke.
Sugared rubbish.
Yeah,
I think it's
fizzy drink. I guess
fizzy drink.
Yeah, fizzy.
Yeah. Yeah, when I was in Yorkshire,
we a very dated word now.
Yeah, we call it pop in Yorkshire. Yeah. You want a bit of pop? Yeah.
Yeah, fizzy pop, I suppose. Yeah. But yeah, so like those sort of things. But yeah, some things are a real pain to wash up. Or to clean up, to recycle, and people aren't going to put that effort in. And why should they? They've already paid for the product. I mean, it's not like the ketchup companies or any of these things are saying, if you clean this up and recycle it, and can prove it or whatever, you get 50p off, people might do that. But they're already paying more and more for this product every time they go shopping.
We're getting some pushback here, Andy. First of all, you've got Graham, who seems to be on one here, saying hot water, a drop of washing up liquid, and shake vigorously for a few gets the job done.
Like I said, that would work for a bottle of pop. Or
no, this is the peanut. This is the peanut butter, I think. And then Colleen is saying the same as well. So there you go. So
okay.
All right. So pop in. Oh, I wouldn't have thought that, would you? It would be called pop in Canada. So
no, not really. I would have thought.
All right, it seems to be pop everywhere. Then I obviously
pop in the Midwest.
Yeah, I obviously didn't need for you to explain what it was. Then
obviously everyone knows what pop is. Yeah.
Yeah. It's me. I'm out of date as usual. Right. So the last issue then was obviously going back to the connected issue of crop deaths, which seems to be a big bugbear. And by coincidence, this popped up on. It was a comment on I think maybe the live stream that I did. Yeah, I think it was the David Rams live stream, and so. This is only about 15 hours ago. The whole crop death argument is a non-issue. It never was, because basically it doesn't happen. Now, that's the most contentious bit of that. It doesn't happen, I think.
It probably needs, it doesn't happen anything like it used to. Because there's definitely movement forward, but I don't think that we're in a position to say it no longer happens.
Yeah. Also, I think we've got an issue between, say, the control of, should we say, control in bunny rabbit ears of mammals versus insects, right? Because the solutions that we're about to talk about wouldn't necessarily deal with insects, I don't think. Although here it claims something about.
Although there definitely is. I know now, I'm not sure exactly of brands, but I know some of the insecticides are so specific that they could potentially be sprayed in an area, and they're only going to target the one individual rather than 20 or 30 that they used to potentially take with. So there's already advancements definitely being made in that way forward. There absolutely are. I just don't know enough about them to kind of talk about them, whereas the other stuff I do know a bit more about.
Well, that's interesting, though, because we know that there's a relatively recent YouTuber who is making the claim that it's kind of more vegan to eat flesh than I think an apple, because of the insecticides sprayed on the apple will then transfer to birds in the area, right? And so that will get around.
Have you noticed that there's no thought about how those insecticides don't affect any of the people? I mean, they're that rife, these poisons, that the birds are affected. Well, would we not be? Well, they affect the small mammals. Why wouldn't they affect large mammals?
Well, do you if you get some apples from a supermarket, do you wash them before you eat them?
I don't, but as you know, you're supposed to. I normally give them a rub. I'm the old-fashioned like cricket ball thing.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, and then bowl it. Yeah. Okay.
I don't even know where that habit come from, but yeah, whenever I have an apple, I always give it like a rub here.
Oh, okay. Well, at least it's better than lower down.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, it might well be that was just something I was taught when I was young, that just give it a rub, because there is a danger there of what might be laced on it or any of the other stuff. Yeah.
This is interesting. This goes back to what we were saying before, because I think this is what you were saying about. I mean, obviously, Kev's favorite lentils. You can keep them forever, right? And so the chances of them ending up being waste. And another thing I always say about food waste is, it is a bit interesting that when people say food waste, it means that human beings haven't consumed it, because everything gets consumed by someone in the end. So it's really quite interesting, human-centric kind of statement that food waste is a major problem, in the sense that the problem is because of the energy that's used to create it. But in terms of it just lying there doing nothing afterwards, that bit is not true about it, I don't think.
No, and I suppose kind of spiritually as well. It's just going back to like the sandwich platter and things like that. it would be so much nicer for the individuals that were in those sandwiches to be returned to the earth too, as opposed to sitting inside a plastic package for the next 2 or 3 years in a landfill, like, you know, to be composted in some way. There's lots of, I mean, even if they turn around, I know a lot of this is because they can't declare whether it's fit for human consumption or whatever, which is probably why they wouldn't release the fruit and veg and would give you the bread. It's down to some silly policy, but there's nothing stopping all of this being composted. All of this could be regenerated in that sense, and at least that way, everyone who's had their life taken from them for a sandwich is in some way returned to the earth. In the same way that, you know, you suggest burying a pair of shoes or anything else, it's kind of the best that you can hope for. It's better than rotting in a bin bag.
Yeah, and also the plastic thing is problematic on all kinds of levels.
Absolutely, yeah.
So let's just get through this, because we've then got some pictures to end with. And more to the point, it appears that the vast majority of vegans are utterly unaware at recent developments of agricultural technology. Now, you've been talking about this on TikTok for several weeks, along with Kev and Graham already.
Yeah, probably even longer than that. Probably actually goes back to before Christmas, when I started really sort of focusing on the whole crop desk argument in general and saying, well, hang on a minute, there are a lot of things that already exist. And as I have noticed exactly the same thing, actually, that a lot of the vegans don't know this information. They don't. It's much easier for them to just say we don't live in a vegan world, rather than actually say, well, there is potentially some solutions available that we can offer. But I think it works not only because I always like to offer a solution, but it's nice when you're being not necessarily attacked, but put on the spot by a non-vegan that says, well, what about crop deaths? And you turn it around and say, yeah, we know about them. This is a potential solution. What are you doing? Or what do you think we should do about it? Because,
yeah, it's really,
you know, you've answered the question and turned it back on them.
Yeah, when you do that, they tend to go silent, don't they? Yeah. Okay, so recent developments in agricultural technology that can reduce crop deaths to zero with 100% surety. It involves heat sensors, scanners, drones, and artificial intelligence. So we'll come back to that. The tech is so sensitive now that it can work right down to the level aphids, which is pretty incredible. Moreover, however, that's missing the even bigger issue, i.e. that veganism is not synonymous with industrial plant agriculture, which is the peanut under the shell game the slaughter industry is trying to play at present with this trope. Veganism is not plant agriculture. It is not even plant consumption. It is about the refinement of human activity in relationship to other animals. Therefore, it is about the death someone in plant production might cause, and the elimination of them. A job that's already been achieved by non-vegans without the majority of vegans' awareness even, which is a really interesting point, because we've always said that when the vegan community gets big enough, this is the initiative that the vegans would start to really push for. But it's happening already from non-vegans, which is interesting.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then you've got,
I mean, they're not looking at it from the same viewpoint as what we are. I mean, these solutions are coming in because they solve economic problems and efficiency problems. However, they are definitely being done. Yeah, I mean, well, there's a great example of just that in one of the pictures that we'll look at in a moment.
Yeah. And just to answer Deb, it's actually a comment on YouTube. So I was part of a panel with David Rams and Jordan from Camp Out, Ronnie Lee, and George Martin from the Vegetarian Debunked website. And so this is a comment that kind of accrued from that, but it's a recent one. As I said, it was only about 15 hours ago, so it's not as such a document. It's a comment. Then you've got the usual kind of vegan argument at the back here. If you've ever arguing crop deaths with a carnivore, you can also correctly point out that the greatest number of crop deaths are caused by the production of plant foods, and especially silage, hay, for slaughter animal consumption. Now, this is an interesting one that I don't think we've developed too well, this thing about silage production, because farmers in the crop death argument almost try and keep this bit quiet, you know, because so essentially these are these massive kind of round bales and that you see in the fields and everything, and there's no real use for silage apart from feed, right?
Yeah, and I mean we've got this. There's in fact there's at least two on our TikTok lives and in the playlist on my channel where we've had conversations with farmers where they dispute this up until even these are outside reared, grass fed, and then it's like, yeah, but you still feed them silage in the winter, don't you? And they're reluctantly like, well, yeah, we definitely do. So even those who claim that it's all year round outside are still using silage during the winter. And
yeah,
I mean,
but the thing is though, Andy, I think that they would then say that still means it's grass fed.
Well, yeah, I mean, and technically it is.
Yeah.
The silage is still grass. So
yeah. So Colleen is saying, what is silage? And then she gets quite aggressive. What is silage? What is silage? She's saying, what is silage? So
we didn't answer quick enough.
No, that's right. Yeah. So so grass cut and wrapped up into
yeah, Colleen, if you've ever seen one of those videos that are quite funny where someone pretends that they grow marshmallows, they're like usually big white wrapped cylinders or black wrapped cylinders. And there's a pretty funny video on TikTok where someone pretends that they're growing marshmallows because that's what someone asked if it was in the background, and it's silage wrapped in white plastic.
Oh yeah, that's right. And there's another interesting use of plastic too, right?
Yeah, huge amounts. Yeah. And quite often as well, you'll find that if there's bad weather or whatever, they have to go and wrap them for a second time. And it's not. Yeah, I don't think that can. I don't know for sure, but I don't think that can be reused. I'm assuming it's like Stanley knifed and kind of useless afterwards.
Yeah, it's. I think this is true also from Deborah. A farmer once told me that even if you get just like a pinprick in the silage wrap, that can be devastating.
Because it obviously the moisture will get in and everything else, and it will start getting damp, and by the time you open it, it'll all be monkey.
Yeah. So even if it's not usable, the actual nutritional value gets completely wrecked, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so here's some pictures that we can throw together very quickly. So these are the ones that you sent to me, Andy. So it's not quite in the order you sent them, but
that's not the end of the world.
Yeah, so this is small scale stuff at first, right? Yeah. But you always talked about there are now farm equipment with ultrasonic devices, like modern day tractors and stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember you talking to Kerry about that.
Yeah.
Kerry
I can never think of the model number, but the most recent New Holland has ultrasound built in. And again, it plays into this. They're not doing it because they're worried so much about crop deaths. They're doing it because it makes their whatever more efficient or whatever. However, these are changes that are being made without vegans pushing for them to be made.
Yeah. So if you put an ultrasonic device on, say, a combine harvester, and it's nothing to do with crop deaths being a problem as such from a vegan point of view, so where's the problem? Can you explain that bit?
I don't actually know exactly what they're there for. If they're not there to protect, but what I'm saying is,
well, it's because of the damage to the equipment.
Yes, it's not done per se because they're looking to protect, say, fawns. It's because
no, so it's not from a vegan point of view, right? But it is from a production point of view. Yeah, because
I mean, they're looking at it from the point of if they were to accidentally drive over a mammal, it's not only all the crops in that area that's completely contaminated and unusable, but it takes a huge portion out of their day. It could disrupt their equipment. It could break their equipment. That's what they're trying to avoid. They're not doing it because they're against the extermination of life. They're doing it because it's a pain in the ass for them when it happens. However, it's still a benefit for us going forward. And it also shows that when we have these conversations, there are already, I mean, the reason that I've included this one, it's not really farm one, it's something that people could have in their back gardens, but it's like, this is stuff that me and you could go and buy today. This already exists. This technology exists. It's out there. We can go and buy it. Anyone can use this. So this is technology that can be improved upon. So this is
it just goes to show
on, and that's where
what's going on. Now, some people, going back to the combine harvesters, some people claim that fawns are often caught in them. And then it got to the stage where I think you monitored or was part of a conversation. I think it might have been on Instagram, where farmers or drivers of combine harvesters were getting pretty angry about these claims, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah, that's where I first learned about the drone project that was essentially set up initially to kind of look for these fawns that had been left. That's initially where the drones came in. I think it started in Germany. They started using drones to search these fields because initially, and this is another thing that people don't want to talk about, non-vegans, huge groups of them, they used to walk these fields before the harvest to make sure that that wasn't the case. And they replaced human beings with drones. And then after a little while, they realized that these drones could be used to spray. So, like I said, their thinking is always, how can we do this more efficiently? But those drones are now used to keep birds and small animals away. They're actually used to monitor, and they use lights at night to make sure that they stay out so they don't have to. So all of these things are happening without any vegans pushing them to happen. They might not be happening for the reasons that we would choose for them to happen.
That's the interesting thing, isn't it?
Yeah, but they are happening just as standard, and it just shows you, like, all these conversations we have and say, can you imagine if we looked in this direction for 20 years? I mean, exactly. And we've already got kind of like the seeds of all this technology and all this information is there. It's stuff that we can go and buy right now. So imagine if we actually put some time and effort into it.
Yeah. So, I mean, from my point of view, I always just say, well, if we get enough vegans with enough social political power, we will start this process. But really what it would be is we would just advance a process that's already started.
Yeah, I think that. Yeah, absolutely. And essentially we might change some of the reasoning or the motives behind it. But yeah, I think we would just be supportive because a lot of it already seems to be happening. It's if you're going to look at, I think it's really, really paramount that a company as big as New Holland would start factoring machinery that has this built in, because the money that's gone into researching that, product design, and then implementing it as standard, they're only going to do that if this is something that they've been looking at for a good number of years. It's not like someone just said, oh, by the way, have you ever heard of this thing? And they're like, yeah, we'll chuck it on, see what it does. They've obviously gone through product development, product testing, research, all of these different things, and they decided that it's worthwhile going forward.
This is an interesting thing, though, isn't it? Not an idea, but I've never, but I've found lots of plastic wrappers, styrofoam cups, etc. That's quite interesting, isn't it?
And of course, actually, on that note, I remember I made a pretty hefty response video the year before last to a group of ratters on Facebook, and I used quite a few of their videos as sort of evidence of their stuff. And I remember actually one of the points that I made was that I never saw them actually in anywhere that was causing a problem to the public. I always saw them in hay silage, and it's like, yeah, you create a problem, and then you moan about others that you've created it. These were never rats that were, say, invading a home or even a field and eating the crops. It was always big bales and bales and bales of silage that were dumped in a barn somewhere, and that's where they were nesting. And it's like, yeah, do you realise how much heat that these bales put out as well? The warmth that they can nest at the bottom. You know, there's so many different factors. It's not just the fact that it's a source of food there, it's the warmth too, because they're putting out a serious amount of energy.
That's right. Yeah. Well, I mean, that also affects the nutritional value, doesn't it? Yeah. So going then back to this, so we get into the larger scale things now. So I mean, this is almost like CCTV, but it moves on to this is where this is like a more kind of a monitoring system rather than just CCTV.
Yeah. Well, basically how it works is, so it's kind of like a very advanced version of, like the security light you'd have in your back garden, and like if a cat comes in the garden, it turns on. Well, that's like a beam. It's a laser essentially that scans the perimeter, and every time that it meets something or someone, that an alarm will sound, but it's ultrasound. So initially it was released to sort of combat large birds.
This is like motion sensor, and then
essentially yes. And it's kind of 24/7, so it'll just basically spin and just circle the perimeter, but it kind of does it, it's hard to explain, but it does it, it's like a grid pattern, so it's really hypersensitive. And initially it was for large birds. There's actually a documentary about this technology if anyone wants to go and watch it. And then they refined it, and it started taking in small birds, and then they refined it so that it touched the ground, and it was actually finding rodents, small mammals. and this is 2.5 years old. So for all I know, they could be looking moving forward where it could take things like butterflies, bees, all of that could be taken into consideration too. Yes. But again, it shows that this has been going on for years. This isn't a guy that's just had an idea one time and put it together. You're talking about years worth of development that this has been thought about. Those are ultrasound ones, and a lot of this, is done by solar panels. It's very low wattage. Quite a lot of it, in fact, the original ones were all run by old car batteries and that sort of thing. So one of the pushback I've heard from farmers is, well, where do you think we're going to get all this money from? And it's very low tech. It's very low expense, and it more or less runs itself once you've purchased it. So, in terms of outgoing costs.
Well, we're back to subsidies, aren't we, really, there?
But yeah, and we're really not talking about a lot of money either, to be perfectly honest. Especially if some of those, I think we haven't seen that picture actually. One of them, the guy made his own sort of trailer that he'd attached this laser to, so he actually just drives it from field to field. Because some of them obviously are fixed and are permanent fixtures, but there's nothing stopping you doing that kind of thing. So
I think we might have a picture of a trailer coming up. But,
yeah, so there is one picture where a guy basically, he manifested it onto a trailer. So
on this one though, Andy, I thought I was really amused because if you look at to the right there, it says crops saved. So this is what saved crops look like, people. If in case you've never seen any.
Yeah,
this is your chance.
This picture was taken from a farming website, so nothing vegan related. They're the ones that are quite happy about the crops being saved. This isn't us talking. This is their language.
So, are you saying then that this farming website thought that they might have to depict what it would look like for farmers to find some saved crops?
Well, I think it's interesting that they're the ones that are pushing this, because they could look at it and say, well, why do we care? We've got a shotgun. I think that's interesting.
Yeah, well, that one is, I think, your favourite one of these, which is coming up in a minute. But
yeah, that's the trailer one. So this is how simple it is, right? You don't want to spend a lot of money. Well, that's a ladder.
I mean, that's essentially a bit of scrap and some welding, isn't it?
Yes, yeah, exactly that. So I mean, we're not talking about huge amounts of money here. I mean, we're talking about a huge amounts of difference, and this technology already exists.
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, Declan at the Sanctuary could make one of these, because
absolutely. I mean, it's only actually the laser emitter that's the expensive part. How you power it could actually be done in any way you want. I mean, that one on the right, that's a farmer that's made that. That's not the company. He made that himself to move it around. So,
well, these seem to have battery packs, right? So presumably you have a couple of those. One of them would be charging. And one of them,
and quite a lot of the setups, they've got 2 solar panels that basically they're good to go. They've got 2 reserve batteries for the bad weather, but most of the time they've got enough power to last. Because obviously this is motion sensor, so it's not working all the time. It works like a trail cam basically. So it's only if it detects anything that it'll actually emit the sound.
Well. That's a ladder. Thanks for clarifying, Andy. That's yeah. And then he says, "Sorry, I'm on one."
But you just think, for example, I've talked about this loads of times. Most farms have already got crap loads of old-fashioned machinery or things that they don't use anymore that are like dumped in fields. Yeah, you go mount one of them on top of one of them. You haven't even got to buy anything. You've probably already got something.
I think the issue here probably for farmers would be the safety of getting this stuff nicked, I suppose.
I suppose, but it's very nichey, isn't it? I mean, unless you've got a buyer, even if you want to go and steal this stuff, because I suppose the actual laser technology is worth a few quid. And unless you've got another farmer that's going to buy it from you, it's not like you can sell it on the black market. There is no market. So maybe, but I don't think it would happen too often before they realise that they can't shift it.
I don't know. Declan from the Sanctuary would say they'll steal the laces out of your shoes if they could.
Yeah, so. I suppose. I mean, I can definitely understand why. Although people come and take trail cams and stuff, because I suppose you can reuse them as you want, anywhere you want. But it's a bit more. So yeah, this is one of the drones that I was talking about. Initially, they were used for kind of like reducing the search idea of humans doing it. And now I
kept this picture in because we're about to see some other pictures of drones, but I kept this one in because I was thinking they must have had a second drone to photograph the first drone, right?
Yeah, well, actually, in the video that that's taken from, I think there's 6 working in conjunction that are all about 20 feet apart. So they kind of like cover the field in one go. Yeah.
So it's like the drone red arrows.
Pretty much, but yeah, I mean. So these ones have now been kind of hybridized so that they can spray too, which obviously massively, which don't forget was a huge part of these big trucks that used to drive through. They were another risk to all the small mammals and birds. Well, now it's being done by drones, so that risk gone to the fawns as well. But also one thing that doesn't get taken into consideration is obviously the farmers are not looking to destroy life in the field because they need the organisms and they need the organisms. Sorry, they need the soil and stuff to replenish so that they can grow the next year. So every time they bring out a new insecticide or pesticide that's least harmful, they move in that direction naturally because that's what they want. They don't want harm for them. They don't want harm for anyone they've got working.
Well, it actually says that in this argument because this Alex McCormick likes language because he talks about agronomy, which is the quality of the soil and in the environment, but he also talks about agronomists, and he also talks about our agronomist back there as well. So he's managed to get that word in 2 paragraphs, which is pretty good. So, but then again, you know how pretentious these people are. We've got the word doctor in front of their names, don't you, Andy?
Yeah.
So
but yeah, and that's exactly it. This is a lot of the ignorance that comes because I mean, most of the time when you have it's not a farmer that's talking about crop death, is it? For the most part, they have a conversation with them and they admit to you. I mean, we've got Ian who quite often joins our TikTok lives, who is an apple farmer, and I know the crop death argument really gets to him more than it does probably some of the vegans that hear it because he's in that field and he's one of those people that are being accused of all this harm.
No pun intended in that field.
Yeah, this is it. That's his job. So it's not us. I mean, this is the point I was trying to make initially with that video. It's not me and you that are responsible for these crop deaths, even if true. It's people like Ian who's telling you that they don't happen, but you're ignoring him. So, like, yeah, I'd imagine that gets a bit offensive eventually because it's not it's not us.
This one's interesting because it's, I mean, like we starting to use words like precision farming technology. So again, you know, that's how things are moving on, I suppose, in terms of technological advances.
Yeah.
Now, this is the one that you liked the most, Andy. Do you want to talk about this?
Yeah, absolutely. So from the same documentary that I was referring to earlier, where it showcases the technology of that laser emitter. So there's about 8 or 9 case studies. So if you do go and watch it, bear in mind it is quite a hard watch. It's not edited very well, and the people kind of give you their life story. But essentially,
there's a filmmaker talking there, folks.
Yeah, I think it's an hour and 40 minutes, and I think it could be reduced to 40 minutes.
What's it called?
I can't remember. I'll grab the link before we get off the show because it's on my phone. It's on my copy and paste, but I've got no way to put it. But essentially, one of the families that they spoke to, or one of the farms that they spoke to, were kind of saying how they'd gone through all these different options, and that's why they put the 3 different pictures up because it's depicting what they were talking about. And I thought what was great about this was, although that wasn't the intention of the designer or the farmer, the 3 violent options that they used to use have now been eradicated by this laser. And although violence was never at the forefront of why they've changed this technology, it's the fact that even without anyone thinking about it, even without any vegan perspective at all, the violence that used to happen, i.e. the birds being shot, poisoned, whatever, all of that's been eradicated now for something that's far more peaceful. And that's actually because it's more efficient for the farmers. So, these are things that are actually beneficial in terms of stopping oppression or minimizing oppression without even realizing that they're doing it. So these are things that we should definitely be supporting. And like the only part of that comment that I did disagree with from Jonah was that I think our obligation or our responsibility is to provide that bit of education because they're not doing it for the same reasons that we would want them to do it. But the initiative is still there. So we can definitely provide that, and we can definitely provide that gap in between. But yeah, I definitely think we should be having these conversations with farmers and encouraging them that they can save money, they can save time.
So do you I mean obviously the yellow thing is the laser itself, right?
Yeah.
So what's this thing in the middle?
And that's a crow shooter, so it makes a banging sound. It's like gas propelled.
Oh, right. There is one of those being used near the sanctuary because you'd swear, I mean, as an old Sab and all that, you'd swear it was someone shooting.
Yeah, that's literally what they sound like. They're usually on some sort of time. So maybe like every 20 minutes or something, they'll go off.
Yeah, right. Okay.
Yeah. They're not. That's why you've got the gas tank there. Yeah.
So Graham is encouraging me to tell the story. Yeah, I didn't go to the Vegan Street thing, so they switched the name to the Vegan Team, I think, but which is pretty good. And so, but I had in my van, I had 3 of the chairs which I thought they'd need. So I contacted Declan, who's got the other transport van. I said, do you need to meet me so I can hand the chairs over? He said, no, it's okay. I've got some of my own, so don't worry about it. So I said, well, they must be deck chairs. So so that's it. What, Graham, was that worth it? I don't think so. Do you? No, not at all. So yes, yeah, that's right. Yeah, so they are really realistic in terms of the gunfire thing, isn't it? You know.
Yeah, they are very realistic. Yeah.
I said to Declan once, I said, blimey, somebody's shooting. And he goes, no, that's too regular in terms of time. So it's definitely one of these yokes.
Yeah, they're normally on. I'm not sure how the timing system works, but I know they're normally like on some sort of timing system. It's not like someone has to keep going there. It just goes off by itself. Yeah.
Right. So that brings us nicely to our end, really, I think. And yeah, so it's funny how something that was initially a joke ended up being something that led us down these 2 kind of serious paths. So we thought, well, let's share it with the world as we do. And so yeah. So okay. So thanks a lot, everyone, for being with us. A couple of comments, just see if I love jokes like that. Yeah, it doesn't really qualify as a joke, I don't think, really. But thanks for calling it that. But just spat my tea out on myself. Okay, I know you really do like them. Then if it's going to have that effect, yeah. So
as long as you've enjoyed yourself, Graham, that's the main thing. Oh, this certainly went on longer than I thought it did. I mean, when we were talking about it, I thought it would only be like half an hour.
No, it's gone on exactly the length that it's gone on.
No, I didn't think it would. We'd be still talking about this an hour later. So no, it's been.
No, I don't think so either. So just to finish off, then, have you got your didgeridoo?
I don't know if we can get away with using that joke.
No, I know. Yeah, that's the second one. It's even worse now, isn't it? See you, folks.
See you later.